Hey, welcome back to Daily Stand-Up, everybody. So, I think it was last night. I spent I don't even know how much time I spent on it, but I finally figured out what in the world the problem was with the deserialization error that I was running into last video. So, I'm going to show you actually just like some basic steps that I had to take to solve the problem. And to be honest with you, I went on so many Stack Overflow threads and just random stuff to finally like even come to what I thought would be the problem. So what the problem ended up being was that my string that I was sending from my Rust microservice was not being format was not in JSON format. It was literally just a string. So what I did was I basically created this JSON object with message as the one property, and then the message that I pass into for my engine, overheating warning that I'm going to send up to my RabbitMQ server, and then I sent it as the payload, and then I had to send it as slice, so it extracts a slice containing the entire vector, so equivalent to that. So I had to do that to satisfy the type that it wanted for payload. Because if I didn't think I would need to do that, and then after reading some stuff, apparently that's what I had to do. So I'm doing that. Now it's sending actually a valid JSON string up to my RabbitMQ server, which is what I need to be able to consume it from the .NET side of things. And so that was the Rust side of the project. As far as the .NET side of my project, I was actually doing something wrong on that end as well. So evidently, I'm using Mass Transit and RabbitMQ as the host. So Mass Transit basically, when it sends a message to whichever queue that you pick, it can be RabbitMQ, AWS, SQS, Azure, whatever it is. It wraps it in a message envelope, and it has a lot of metadata associated with it, a lot of other message headers. But the part that I need is not. I don't really care about any of that, right? I just want the actual raw message. So the problem is that I can send it from my .NET side up to my RabbitMQ and consume it from Rust just fine, because it already has that message envelope that it just ships, a message with out of the box. And so on my Rust side, I just have to basically deserialize that and, go down a couple nested properties to get to the message that I need. But if to go in the reverse, so basically to interop between a couple different systems, to go from my Rust microservice, which is literally just sending a raw JSON string up to my RabbitMQ server, in order for my .NET application, which is using Mass Transit to read that message that's in the queue, I have to add actually some configuration to basically tell my receiving endpoint, to only use or to basically allow it to consume raw JSON, because out of the box, the deserializer is not checking for JSON. It's checking for that message envelope object that Mass Transit ships with out of the box. So because I'm not using that, I have to specify use raw JSON serializer, and I also have to clear the deserializers. And that's the part that I just couldn't get a straight answer to. So it wasn't enough that I specified to use raw JSON serializer. I had to actually clear all the existing deserializers. And it's also interesting too, so the naming of this is weird. So it's raw JSON deserializer, but there's no use raw, like you'll see here, use raw JSON. I had to specify, for whatever reason, to tell it to use raw JSON serializer. And there's a deserializer. I don't know. But this is what worked. So it's kind of weird. But I'm gonna go ahead and run it. And again, it's gonna send like 600 messages up to our RabbitMQ. You can see that you have the notifications here. So this is what the Rust service is sending, right? Shut down and overheating, right? So once it gets to 200 messages, send that. Once it gets to 300, send that. And because I'm sending, over that, right, you're going to see it come through a few times. But you can see that it's now parsing correctly. So in my consumer, notifications consumer, you can see that now I'm taking in the type of notification that I specified just has a property of message of type string. And that's going to get consumed by this notifications consumer class, and then it's going to extract the message. So this is what you're seeing being printed to the console, right? The context and the message. So now we have a completely functioning starting point at .NET, up to RabbitMQ, over to my Rust microservice, back to RabbitMQ in a different queue, and then now consumed by my .NET front end or .NET back end. And I can parse the message. So now, because I have all that in place, now I can send this over to the front end and then, do whatever else I need to do. But now we have this loop of a system where nothing is like, there's no, everything is decoupled and there's different, independent responsibilities. But this was the wildest. This was just such an odd configuration. I went through so many YouTube videos and just so many just weird sources of mass transit. I think the author of mass transit, I think it's him. He has a lot of content around the use of mass transit in RabbitMQ. And then I finally found a thread on GitHub where somebody ran into the exact same problem I did, like to a T. Like they needed to deserialize a message that wasn't in the message envelope form from a system that wasn't a .NET system. That's exactly what I needed to do. But there wasn't, like, I didn't see an answer, right? He just posted like, hey, this should work, but it doesn't. And from there I was like, oh, okay, well, now what do I do? So somehow I watched a video that was linked, and that gave me like part of the information, and then I don't know, whatever. But it ended up being that I was having an issue finding sources that told me how to wire up that, the service in my middleware to add mass transit, and what settings I needed to specifically put on this receiver endpoint to check for that. Like I would get bits like, telling me to add this, or telling me to, to add the deserializer, and then I saw some people tell me to use raw JSON deserializer. I saw some people tell me to use this one. I saw some people telling me that I had to make a custom deserializer and then add like an override to this receive endpoint, just crazy stuff. But it's like, this just feels like it's not correct. And I tried pretty much everything, but the only one that I got to work was this setup here. So if anyone runs into this problem, give this a shot. Again, this is the program. I'm in the program CS file on the main method. Coming right down here, this is all the code that it took me to get this to work. So hopefully I'm going to post this again in a write-up I do, but this allowed me to read raw JSON from my consumer. And if I go to my consumer class, notifications consumer, you can see all the other random stuff that I try to do. None of this worked. I don't know why. And then I tried adding a bunch of these overrides in the middleware as well. And then I tried to change this to a byte array. That didn't work either. I tried to change it to a list of string. I tried pretty much every permutation of configuration I could think of, and nothing worked. But so this is the code for my consumer class that actually got me to be able to parse the raw JSON that would came into the queue. So I really didn't have to do much of anything, right? I just have to now match whatever the JSON object is, and then just mimic that in my class. So because I have the message property, right, I'm just gonna create a message field here with type string, and I got it. So if I add another field, or if I add another property to this object here, to this JSON object, then I just go ahead and I think I should be able to just add it here and it should be fine. But that'll be my next thing I'm going to try. But you can see it parses correctly, but yeah, again, so that was the issue I was running into. I think I was also using this incorrectly. Like I think configure endpoints must have been like overriding what I was trying to do in the receive endpoint. So I think I just had my configuration wrong on the C# side. I'm trying to think if there was any other thing I had to do. I don't think. Yeah. Honestly, the other thing I might consider doing also, because I now know that I can just send raw JSON up to my RabbitMQ server from my .NET side, and I don't need all the mass transit like headers associated with that message. I might just configure this later on to just send raw JSON up to my Rust or up to the queue, so that way Rust doesn't have to like parse down into a nested object in the JSON, especially if I'm not even using it. So I don't think it'll be that hard to do. I think if I just configure it to use to send raw JSON from the publish endpoint, I think I should be good. But yeah, I'll have to figure that out. But once I do, I'll make note of that. But I think that covers it. So I'm glad I got it working, and hopefully we'll be able to now work on the real-time connection from the back end to the front end. So that'll be the next part. So anyway, guys, appreciate you watching. I'll see you next one.